The mistake ***. The night was thick with summer heat as Officer Stephen Grady pulled onto Michigan Avenue. His shift had been dull, just traffic stops and noise complaints, when he spotted a silver Tesla idling outside a late-night coffee shop. Inside the car sat a black woman in a sleek business suit, scrolling through her phone. Stephen narrowed his eyes. He didn't see a lawyer coming home from a 12-hour court session. He didn't see a woman who had just won a major class action lawsuit. He saw suspicion. Flipping on his sirens, he pulled in behind her and strode to the driver's side. Without introduction, he barked, "License and registration." Now. The woman, whose name was Danielle Pierce, looked up calmly. "Officer, may I ask why I'm being stopped?" Stephen's lips curled into a smirk. "I ask the questions." Danielle, exhausted but composed, handed over her credentials. His smirk faltered slightly as he read, "Danielle Pierce, attorney at law." But he wasn't about to back down. He ordered her out of the car. Searched it without consent. Accused her of acting nervous. Threatened to tow her Tesla for obstructing an officer. Bystanders started filming. Danielle stood silently, letting it happen, because she had a plan. The next morning, Stephen's world shifted. Danielle filed a lawsuit. Not a complaint. Not a review request. A full-scale civil rights lawsuit backed by her own powerful law firm. The news went viral. Top Chicago attorney racially profiled by local cop, demands full reform. Within 24 hours, protests began outside the precinct. Civil rights groups rallied behind Danielle. The mayor's office scrambled for damage control. Stephen, meanwhile, found himself under investigation, stripped of his badge pending inquiry. But for Danielle, this wasn't just about one stop. It was about tearing down an entire system. The reckoning ***. The courtroom crackled with tension. It wasn't just Danielle Pierce versus Officer Stephen Grady anymore. It was Danielle versus a broken system that had allowed officers like him to profile, harass, and intimidate without consequences for decades. The trial had drawn national attention. CNN trucks lined the street. Civil rights leaders like Angela Brooks and Jamal Turner sat in the gallery. Danielle's mother sat in the front row, a proud but trembling figure, clutching her daughter's childhood photo like a shield. The city watched, and for once, it was the officer who had to answer. Danielle took the stand with the same poise she had that night behind the wheel. She recounted every detail: the aggression, the illegal search, the humiliation. Her voice never shook. Her hands never fidgeted. "Officer Grady didn't see a lawyer," she said into the microphone. "He saw a stereotype. He saw someone to control. But I am not a threat. I'm not a mistake. I am not a lesson he gets to teach." The defense tried to twist the narrative. She was uncooperative. She looked suspicious. She failed to immediately submit. Danielle's lawyer, a sharp, middle-aged black man named Malcolm Sharp, shredded their arguments like paper. "Suspicion is not probable cause," he thundered. "And dignity is not defiance." Then came the footage. The bystander video played across 4 large screens. Stephen barking orders, yanking open her door, rifling through her car without consent. No drugs. No weapons. No crime. Only a tired black woman dressed for court, attacked because she dared to exist where she wasn't supposed to. The jury didn't take long. They returned after just 2 hours. The foreman stood and read. "We find the defendant, Officer Stephen Grady, guilty of racial profiling, unlawful search and seizure, and violation of civil rights. Gasps echoed. Tears flowed freely. The judge awarded Danielle $3.5 million in damages, one of the largest civil settlements against the Chicago Police Department in history. But the money wasn't what mattered, because Danielle demanded one more thing. As part of the settlement, Officer Grady had to publicly apologize, on live television, during a primetime broadcast. And he did. In a choked, humiliated voice, he read a written statement prepared by Danielle's team. I acknowledge that my actions were rooted in prejudice. I am deeply sorry for the harm I caused Miss Pierce and the greater community. But Danielle wasn't watching him. She was standing outside the courthouse steps, speaking directly to the crowd. No settlement, no apology, no money can erase the trauma of racism, she said. But every battle won is a stone removed from the mountain standing over us. And one day we will bring it down entirely. The crowd roared. Flashbulbs popped. Children sitting on shoulders waved signs that read, "Justice looks like this." That night, Danielle returned home. Not to a quiet apartment. Not to loneliness. But to flowers on her porch from strangers. To handwritten notes from students she had inspired. To a city that, for once, had bent toward justice because one woman refused to be invisible. She sat by the window looking out at the skyline and whispered, "This is just the beginning." And somewhere across Chicago, another little black girl fell asleep dreaming that she too could change the world. The movement begins ***. Danielle Pierce sat at her modest wooden desk, papers spread out before her like a general planning for war. It had been 3 months since the trial ended, 3 months since she had looked Officer Stephen Grady in the eye and refused to break. The world had moved on as it often does. The news cycle shifted to fresh scandals, politicians grumbled about due process, and the city quietly wrote her settlement check. But Danielle? She hadn't moved on. She had moved forward. Because what had happened to her wasn't isolated. It was part of a larger disease, and she had decided it was time to be more than just a survivor. She would become the cure. Her phone buzzed nonstop now. Mothers calling about sons brutalized during stop and frisks. Restaurant owners racially profiled by city inspectors. Teenagers too scared to report harassment by off-duty officers. Danielle listened to every story. She didn't rush them. She didn't treat them like case files. She treated them like what they were, wounds. She remembered what it felt like to sit alone in her Tesla that night, heart racing, pretending not to be terrified. She vowed no one would feel that way again without knowing someone had their back. Thus was born her next battle. The Liberty Initiative. A legal aid and education project designed to arm everyday citizens with knowledge, resources, and a team ready to defend their rights. The motto was simple. Know your worth. Know your rights. The first Liberty Initiative event was held at a community center in Bronzeville. Danielle walked in expecting maybe 24 people. There were over 200. The chairs overflowed. People leaned against walls. Teenagers sat cross-legged on the floor. The sight nearly stole her breath. There were older men in faded army jackets, hands rough from factory work. Young women balancing babies on their hips. Students with wide eyes and worn-out sneakers. Clergy in collared shirts, activists in slogan tees. The entire city was here. Not just to listen, but to fight. Danielle took the mic, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. I was taught that if you play by the rules will protect you, she said. I learned that's not true for all of us. Heads nodded. But I also learned something else, something they never wanted me to know. We are stronger together. Cheers erupted. Claps echoed off the old brick walls. Danielle explained practical legal rights. When can you legally refuse a search? How to document police encounters safely. How to file official complaints, and when to go straight to the courts. She handed out printed rights cards that could fit into a wallet. Laminated steps to remember if harassed by authorities. She trained volunteers to act as legal observers at protests. She organized court buddy teams, so no one would have to walk into a hearing room alone. And slowly something magical happened. Fear began to turn into power. Within months, the Liberty Initiative opened a permanent office, a tiny second-floor space above a soul food cafe on 51st Street. It wasn't fancy. It smelled like frying chicken most days. The heater rattled. The roof leaked when it rained. But it was theirs. Danielle worked 16-hour days, fueled by coffee, determination, and the endless hum of community spirit. One afternoon, as she sorted through intake forms, she spotted a familiar face in the waiting room. An elderly woman sitting prim and proper in a powder blue suit. Mrs. Evelyn Richardson. The same retired schoolteacher who had testified at Danielle's trial months earlier about being harassed outside her own home. Danielle rushed over. "Mrs. Richardson, are you all right?" The woman smiled warmly. "I'm just fine, dear. I didn't come here for help. I came here to volunteer." Danielle blinked. "You're volunteering?" Mrs. Richardson chuckled. "I can type. I can answer phones. And I know how to fight when it matters. My generation marched so you could stand. Now it's time I stood for you." Tears pricked Danielle's eyes. This was bigger than any settlement check. Bigger than any courtroom victory. This was revolution. Built not from anger alone, but from love. From legacy. Meanwhile, the police department was squirming. Officer Grady's case had unleashed a tidal wave of public records requests, lawsuits, and protests. Danielle's Liberty Initiative became a magnet for every whistleblower who had ever been silenced. Anonymous tips flooded in. Secret quotas for ticketing black drivers. Training manuals with racist caricatures tucked in the margins. Emails where officers laughed about messing with uppity folks. Danielle, with her law license and newfound influence, began turning over evidence to journalists, watchdog groups, and civil rights attorneys. One by one, corrupt officers fell. Precinct commanders resigned. The police union, once a bulletproof shield, found itself forced into negotiations. Change was slow, grueling, and often ugly. But it was happening. And at the center of it all stood Danielle Pierce. The woman they thought they could intimidate into silence. The woman who turned one wrongful traffic stop into the ignition point of a citywide movement. On the anniversary of her arrest, Danielle held a candlelight vigil outside the very coffee shop where it all began. Thousands attended. They held candles against the dark Chicago sky, their flames tiny but fierce, their bodies packed shoulder to shoulder against the cold. Danielle spoke last. She didn't need a microphone this time. Her voice was carried by hope itself. "They tried to make me afraid," she said, candles flickering in the wind. "But tonight, look around. See how many of us there are. See how many refuse to be afraid." The crowd roared. Children sat on parents' shoulders, fists raised high. Grandmothers swayed and clapped. Young men wiped away tears. And Danielle stood before them, a living, breathing testament to resistance. A spark that had become a wildfire. Chicago would never be the same again. Not because justice was given, but because justice had been taken back. And Danielle Pierce had led the charge. The end.